of coffee, then I'll go. Thought that I'd just drop by and let you know that I'm leaving town tomorrow. I'll cause you no more sorrow. I'll just have a cup of coffee, then I'll go. I brought the money like the lawyer said to do. It won't replace all the heartaches I've caused you. It won't take the place of loving you, I know. I'll just have a cup of coffee, then I'll go.
Good morning and welcome back to the channel, Grand Colombia, and welcome to another Coffee Time Live. Whoa, these things are loud. Let me turn that down. I'm blowing my eardrums out. Okay, we got different software today. We have different software because in a few minutes we're going to bring on a live guest with a pretty interesting topic, I would say. I can't show you the weather because this software doesn't allow for the second camera, but I can tell you that it's been rather warm, windy, but I know that we hit a record high, but I think we got up to 87 degrees one day, which I've never seen at anything like that. But there's been a wind, so it's never really felt like it. But El Nino is here, and, you know, we're going to go for a ride for a few months. All right, let's see. What do we have for comments? Okay. As always, Juka, thank you very much. Mark, good morning. Looking forward to meeting some more Coffee Time followers Tuesday morning, 11 a.m. I thought it was 10 at Barista for breakfast. I thought it was for coffee. My favorite breakfast in Armenia. I really thought it was 10. Didn't I put 10 on all those notices I sent out for you? But yes, I will be there. I didn't know if I was going to be able to go, but I've worked it out. I will be able to go. I was actually planning for 10, but I guess maybe it's going to be 11. Won't that be more like lunch? Well, that'll work out good for me. Let's see. This Tuesday, July 25th. And the location, if you look on the Facebook Adventure in Grand Colombia, it's there. And if you look on the YouTube channel, in the comments, the general comments that are posted, I put it there also. And contribution from Anonymous, aka Jerry, thank you very much. I appreciate it. How you doing? When are you coming back? I know he hates his job, but he says he's got to try to stick it out for the next year. There's nothing like having one foot out the door in a place that you don't enjoy being. It's Rob, good morning from Fort Lauderdale. How you doing? Now, he went to Dominican Republic. I didn't know you were back already. Turtle, good morning. Humpty Dumpty here. Yes, you will hear that story because it's Turtle that'll be coming on live in a few minutes. Good morning from Humpty Dumpty land. Dan Spencer, buenos dias. It's a beautiful day in Ibagué. Well, okay. I'll give you that one. It has some nice days. Juka, greeting from Finland. How you doing? Mike Jarvis, good morning all. The famous Mike. Seems like everybody knows Mike. All right, so we've got that. What we're going to do today is people are always asking about healthcare. the number one thing is it safe? And we kind of beat that one to death. And number two is, how's the healthcare? I mean, that's like the second most popular question. Everybody wants to know about the healthcare. And when I was in Ecuador, it was the same thing. How's the healthcare? Well, in my opinion, it kind of sucked there. Everybody that went to the hospital had long waits and delays. It seemed like half of them came out with some kind of infection and had to go back in. It just was not the best situation. It was overly expensive. Delays were crazy. But you'd read on Facebook that it had wonderful health care. It just wasn't true. I mean, occasionally you might have somebody that had a good experience, but you had way too many bad experiences. Some of the same people that raved about its health care would post up on Facebook. First, they'd say, oh, I went and I had wonderful doctors. And then they had to go back and there were problems and more problems and more problems. And they complained about it on Facebook. It's like, yeah, when you went to your first appointment for consultation, it was wonderful. But then when you actually needed service, kind of fell down real quick. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get good health care, but, there were issues and it contradicted what was said about it. Well, people say that there's great health care here in Colombia. So do we have the same situation? So Turtle, if you didn't know this, came with issues. Well, first he lived in Costa Rica, then he lived in Ecuador, then he moved to Colombia. And he had some issues. He had some pre-existing issues that he had to deal with in Ecuador. And then from Ecuador, he had to deal with some issues here in Colombia. But since he's been here, he's had several pretty serious medical situations. So he's going to tell us about, starting with, what did he bring with him to Ecuador? What was his experience in Ecuador? Because we have a lot of people from Ecuador that watch. What was his experience here in Colombia? And even currently, well, I guess he's out of bed and walking around, but he's been bedridden for weeks. So we're going to bring Turtle in and we're going to check that out. Let me check a couple comments and then we'll bring him in. We've got David. Hello. I'm in Armenia and loving it. That's awesome. You might want to meet up with everybody on Tuesday at 11 a.m. apparently, or if you're me, 10 a.m. Bill, good morning from Montenegro near Armenia. Yeah, it's kind of it's one of the towns, or it's actually kind of almost a small city here in Quindío that was the first one to kind of degrade to a certain level of criminality. So, just use your caution there. Libby, how you doing, Libby? Good morning from Cuenca. She's been living in Ecuador for a number of years. She might be able to comment any experience she has right here in the chat. John, morning from Seattle. How's the rain? Sang and Peg, morning all. That's what we have there. All right, so let's I'll look at these as we go. Feel free to ask Turtle some questions, but we'll probably hold them and every so often maybe hit some questions. Now, I would say without further ado, but that's been kind of beat to death. So here is Humpty Dumpty, otherwise known as Turtle.
Thank you, Lauren. Do you have the slides that I sent to you?
Yes.
Can you show those? They're sort of a prelude to my whole journey here.
Well, I was going to show them as you go along,
okay.
But I will show the first one. Let me.
I can show you. Let's see. Can you see that?
Tell that story.
Okay. I was living in Manizales, and Lauren was living in Manizales at the same time, and I belonged to a small gym. And I invited Lauren into the gym, and we'd work out in the mornings and stuff. Lo and behold, from unclean equipment, I ended up with MRSA. Went to an emergency room. They wouldn't even let me leave the hospital. You can see the little red dots on my hand. That creeped up all the way to my elbow, and my arm swelled up as the red dots went up my arm. After being in the hospital 3 or 4 days, they sent me home, so that I wouldn't spread the MRSA to other people. And I had a nurse come in daylight hours and also at night, and a doctor coming in the afternoon. And the bottom line on all this, you might ask, how much should I pay for this wonderful care? And it was 4,100 pesos, and that's pretty much for everything. Any co-payment is 4,100 pesos.
Now tell about your experience in Ecuador. I know you had an issue there that actually dragged over into Colombia.
I lived in Cuenca for 5 years, and I got very, very sick, and sick by I lost 40 pounds in a couple months. It was pretty drastic. I couldn't keep anything in my system. So I went to a number of doctors, and it couldn't be diagnosed. They didn't know what the situation is, and they traded me around to different doctors, different hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I felt like I was going to die, so I went back to San Francisco, and the first doctor I saw diagnosed me with hepatitis C. And sure enough, that's what I had. It took 2 years to solve that situation, but Ecuador wasn't even able to diagnose the sickness. Wonderful, huh? And I was paying for that service also.
Now, was that part of wasn't there a test that you had to get in Colombia that you were trying to?
Yeah, thank you for that. When I went back to the United States, and I got cured for a cost of $181,000, but I was cured. When I went back to Cuenca, moved here to Colombia, and I needed to get a test every 5 years to see if the virus is somewhere in my system, because hepatitis C is it's a dastardly virus, and it can hide out in a number of different places. When I got into, so they couldn't give me the test in Cuenca. I got here in Colombia. They gave me the test within 2 or 3 days. Boom, I'm virus free. But that's the difference between Cuenca and Colombia, in my eyes.
Well, you've become very experienced now. after those experiences, signing up also. I remember
signing up. When I first got to Manizales, I went to Sura, to the offices of Sura, and that was very difficult. They said, no, I didn't qualify. Well, that was for the pre-pago, and pre-pago is additional besides the ESP. ESP is a standard care that every Colombian and every resident has a right to. And so finally I was sent to the shopping center, and they had a little kiosk there and signed me up for the healthcare. And boom, I pay monthly. I've paid it for 5 years. And once again, any co-payment is 4,100 pesos. That's for prescriptions. That's for care. That's for specialists. Anything is 4,100 pesos. Plus the monthly, which is about $30 a month.
Now, what he's mentioning there is that aside from the basic health care, which is like Preferred Care Gold back in the day, or Blue Cross Blue Shield, HMO, it covers a whole range of things, pretty much everything that you need. But aside from that, you can opt to get level 1, level 2, level 3 of enhanced care. But after you're 60 years old, and honestly, it's somewhere between 60 and 65. It's not a hard and fast thing. Some people, they'll take it 65, some at 63, but generally once you're over 60, it may or may not be an option for you. And it could give you, you know, like a private room with a big TV and flowers, and I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Those things are there, but honestly, they're not really necessary. You know, so you can buy into those tiers. If you're 59 years old, you can buy into those tiers and you retain those as long as you keep paying. But once you're of a certain age, you're just not even eligible for them. So you just have the basic. But I don't know what the basic doesn't cover. It covers everything. It even goes into a certain amount of dental and other things like that.
It covers having your teeth cleaned and any basic fillings, you know, and you're not going to get resin, you know, you're just going to get silver fillings.
Yeah.
And it also covers
anything that would medically be dangerous to you, they'll cover. So if you got it.
Yeah, the dental, they'll pull your teeth if necessary. They also cover your eyes. So,
right,
you know,
right. Yeah.
So the MRSA situation was solved after about 3 weeks to a month. And, you know, once again, I had the nurse coming in, I had the doctor coming into my house, and they had me hooked up to an IV, and the nurses would change the bags and everything. And once again, you know, my copay was 4,100 pesos. After that, I have high blood pressure. It's a family situation. You know, I have 4 brothers. Everybody's got high blood pressure. Finally, Sura sent me to a cardiologist, just as they always want to keep on top of every situation. So you go into Sura, which has a clinic and basic doctor care, but from there, they'll farm you out to cardiologist or to whatever specialist you need. So send me to a cardiologist. They put a device on me. It's a vest. It's called a halter vest. And I got a phone call from the cardiologist about 1 o'clock one afternoon after I turned in the halter vest, which has a running EKG, etc. He said, Tom, which by the way is my real name. Turtle is something my high school friends gave me 60 years ago. Anyways, he said, would you please come to the office? And I was going, well, you know, doc, how about if I come in tomorrow? And he goes, Tom, come into the office this afternoon. And you never want to hear that from a cardiologist. So I went in, and he explained to me that my heartbeat was going down to as low as 14 heartbeats per minute when I was sleeping. And so within 2 days, I had a pacemaker installed. It was done at the finest hospital in Manizales. I had a private room with that big screen television you're talking about. And, you know, since then, I've had follow-up with cardiologists. I also have had an angiogram. And, you know, all this added care is something that I've never experienced. I certainly didn't experience it in Ecuador, nor Costa Rica, nor Mexico, and even in the United States. I didn't receive that kind of care, but I am receiving it here in Colombia. Colombia is number 22 in the world as far as healthcare, and the United States is 37. So that gives you an idea of the level of care that I feel that I'm getting here in Colombia.
Now we get to your last episode, which you are still suffering from. And
yeah.
Because it happened with your cell phone, we've got a handful of photographs about your adventure in Gran Colombia.
April 20th, I was headed to the pharmacy to pick up my prescriptions. And the building on the left of the picture is my building. And so I walk outside of the building and walk down a set of stairs to get to the next street, to the next street, to the next street. Bucaramanga is very hilly. As I came down that set of stairs, I made it about halfway down, and Humpty Dumpty the rest of the way down. I heard my legs snapping. It was like a twig snapping. And I looked down, and I had rolled my ankle, and my foot was hanging 45 degrees to the left. I laid there in the street for about 5-10 minutes, moaning and groaning. And lo and behold, a lady drove by and she stopped and she got out and she came over to assist me. And she was a doctor. In fact, she was a doctor that lives in my building. Dr. Janet Moreno accompanied me to the hospital, stayed with me for 24 hours, held my hand as they set my leg without medication, which was so painful. I'm sure I broke her hand as I squeezed it. But anyways, I was crying and screaming. They set my leg. She put 600,000 pesos in my pocket so that I could hire a private nurse to be with me while I was in the hospital. And the ortho deemed that I needed, yeah, there's Janet, just a sweetheart. After she gave me the 600,000 pesos, she went to my apartment, packed some clothes, brought them to the hospital, and once again sat with me for 24 hours until the nurse came in. And just, you know, a true angel. And she's now my friend. That's my nurse.
Now that's in your apartment?
Yeah, so the accident was on April 20th. They operated on April 26th. I have a bunch of screws, tornillos in my leg and my ankle, and a bunch of metal. For the next month, I couldn't get out of bed. I had to be assisted even when I went to the bathroom. And guess who's on the TV there?
Some handsome guy. I don't know.
So, you know, that's pretty much my story. Since then, I've had physical therapy, which was paid for, of course. And I am now trying to get reimbursed for the nurse, which may or may not happen. It's a little bit dicey there because I'm not a citizen, but I am a resident. So that's the story.
And they're removing a cast in this picture?
Yeah, I mean, as I sit now, the cast came off around June 20th, and that's what I looked at when they took off the cast. That's one side of my leg, and the other side of my leg, I don't know if I showed that picture or not, has more stitches. But anyways, the stitches are now out. I'm sitting here, I've got my leg elevated and I've got ice on it. So I can walk, I walk my dog and for about a block 3 times a day, but that's about it. On Monday, I'm going to go to a gym that has a physical therapist and do a combination workout physical therapy to get myself back in shape. Because as I walk now, I've got a little bit of a hitch, and you know, just walking 3 blocks for the day puts me in bed.
Well, it hasn't been that long.
It's been 2 months.
That's some hardware.
Yeah, that's some interesting stuff. So between the pacemaker, you know, up in my shoulder and this down in my leg, when I go to airports, I'm sure I'm gonna have an interesting story.
Damn.
So bottom line, I'm not only satisfied with the healthcare in Colombia, I feel blessed to be here, you know, and I moved to Bucaramanga because in Manizales, the elevation in Manizales is 7,500 feet. Beautiful town. I would still be there until I died, except the elevation was affecting my heart situation, and I couldn't walk a half a block without hyperventilating and stuff. So I visited Bucaramanga and I went, wow. And so I haven't had any breathing issues since I've been here. The hospital that I went to it's called Columbia International Hospital and Heart Care. And it's the #1 heart care hospital in the area. All the doctors are bilingual. Some of the nurses are bilingual. The hospital was as good as the hospital that I was in being cared for hepatitis C in the United States.
Nice. Now, you had to move out of Manizales because you were...
The elevation.
Yeah. But prior to that, prior to the heart issue, I mean, when I lived there, you would go out and walk 5-6 miles a day.
Yeah, it was something that developed over time.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
like-
actually it's a pretty good walking city, particularly if you stay on 23. And if you go from one end to 23, like if you go from Cable to Chipre Park and back again, that's like a 10-mile hike.
It
And
was
it's all relatively level.
I remember when you first came to Manizales and you were staying in an Airbnb and it was down by the home center. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And we had to walk up and, you know, I have no problem with, all right, at that point, I had no problem walking up hills. I had no problems working out in the gym. But slowly, I can remember the day I was crossing the street and I just got this feeling in my chest. It went, I go, wow, that's a little, I was walking to the gym, as a matter of fact. And that's why Sura sent me to the cardiologist. So, you know, once again, showing the quality of care that Sura has provided to me up to this point. You know, I thought it was, you know, maybe I should have it checked out. And they sent me to the best cardiologist in Manizales. So I have nothing but good words.
All right, I got a few questions or comments here. Let's see. Well, first we got the famous Coleman, who's actually in Colombia after a couple years of worldwide travel. Hello, and Dan Spencer. There was no Sura when I moved to Ibagué, so I enlisted with Sanitas. Well, I think they're number 2 or number 1 or number 2, depending on where you are. About the second time I visited. They did an EKG. After that, the bone density scan. In short, they've been exceedingly thorough. Well, it's good to know.
I have a feeling that Sura has been my provider and has done an excellent job. But from what I hear, most of the other providers are doing a great job also.
Yeah, there's only the bottom 2 or 3 in the ranking that I'm told by people here they kind of suck. But the number 1 complaint is the wait to get any kind of care. So if they go to different companies have different procedures, and some of those at the bottom, you have to go to a particular office. And when you arrive at that office, there could be a line 2 blocks long. And so that can be kind of problematic. Which Sura,
on the downside of Sura, there usually are waits. Now, you know, I'm 73. I'll be 74 in October, and you know, I have nothing to do, so the waits really don't bother me. I just take my phone with me. But I could imagine that if you were short fused, or you know, it might bother some people. But for me, it's not. That would be the biggest downside is waiting for the primaries within the clinics.
Well, here, my only experience was before I was going to die, and that's just because I didn't follow up. But my only experience with Sura, I went online, I made the appointment, they gave me a time, I went over there. I was about 5 minutes in line and directly up to the office because I had an appointment. Here in Armenia, if people need something, they don't go online to make an appointment. They'll go and get in line. And then it's first come, first serve. Now, the line there where I wasn't down the block. It amounted to maybe 20 people. But near Parque Fundadoras, I forget which insurance company, but it's one. There's like 12 companies, and you got a few that are considered at the bottom, at least here in Armenia. And there's one that has an office alongside Parque Fundadoras. And every time you go there, particularly in the morning, but in the afternoon it starts all over again, there'll be a line that runs out the door, down the steps, down the sidewalk for a couple blocks, and it's every single day like that. So that's what I'm told here, and once you sign up, you can change companies, but I'm told that it's kind of difficult to make a change.
They discourage changing.
Yeah. So they put a lot of bureaucracy in your way. Yeah. They don't want people bouncing from one to the other. Okay, what do we got here? Mark, good morning. I'm looking forward to meeting our other Coffee Time followers this Tuesday, 25th at Barista, 11 a.m. for breakfast. Are these paid announcements? Let's see. Dan, sorry to hear of your unfortunate accident. I'm just curious why they set your ankle without anesthesia. Also, I'm very happy to hear that you made a spectacular friend. True friends are hard to come by.
Dan, that's my big question also. I just know that it happened. I'm not really sure. I went in through, the ambulance arrived at the hospital, went in through the emergency room, waited maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and finally was taken into a surgical unit, and there were 3 ortho surgeons there, and I don't know if they just wanted to do it right off, but I even asked them, and I didn't get a response. I don't know why, Dan, but I wish they had. It was the most. You should ask your thing I've ever done. I'm sorry.
You should ask your doctor friend why, and let me know, and I'll mention it. That struck me too, but I have noticed in conversations with people here that there are certain things, and I have no idea if this is it. I'd be curious to know, but there's certain ways they do things here that are different than what our experience would be. But that one doesn't seem like it falls into that category.
Well, here's another little quirk. Colombia has a big thing about prescribing narcotics. And I finally had to get the doctor to speak up for me. They were giving me tramadol for, I have 3 fractures. And, it was so painful I didn't sleep for a couple days. And all they were giving me was tramadol. Finally, Janet spoke up, and the morphine started. And that kept me sane while I was in the hospital. Thanks, Dan.
Let's see. We've got, glad things are working out for you.
Thank you.
I'm staying in a town 3 hours north of Buca.
Yahoo! Buca is a wonderful city. I mean, Lauren has visited Buca, and in my eyes, if you're a city dweller, Bucaramanga is the cat's meow.
It's my 3rd favorite place.
Yep,
in Colombia.
Lauren, I think if you spent more time here, it might even slide up the scale for you.
Well, the thing is, it is a city, and I just don't like them. What I love about Manizales is when you're living on 23, you're not living in a big city. The big city is sprawled out, all around you.
Yeah.
But you're not part of it. So you're really living it's almost more of a community. It's like you're living in Armenia, which is very small because of the way it's laid out. And so I never felt like big city, except in that they have all the things that a big city would have.
This is what I loved about Manizales. I visited 6 months before I moved from Cuenca. And I got off the bus and I got to Carrera 23, and I looked around, and in between all the buildings, you can see the vistas, the sights, and it's just gloriously beautiful. And it reminded me of San Francisco. And I went, wow, this is beautiful. And the more, I moved here, and the more that I spent time in Manizales, I built some beautiful friendships and relationships, and everybody that I met. And when I say everybody, the majority of people I met were open, they were kind, And it was just a wonderful experience, something that I had never experienced in the United States, living in Palo Alto, California. Bucaramanga, I'm finding, is a little bit different because it's a bigger city. Like, I live in a neighborhood of high-rise buildings of 10 to 20-story buildings all around me. And, you know, you can just see that would be difficult. But as I walk my dog, I meet people in the neighborhood. You get to know the storekeepers, et cetera. So that's a Colombian thing, you know, the openness and the kindness. Now, do they rise to the level of Janeth Moreno? I don't know. I mean, that's an angel that's, you know, I will do whatever I can for that woman until the day I die.
Yeah, the thing is, that was a situation where you were able to see the depth of what she would do. But on a day-to-day, you wouldn't see that. So you'd meet her, she was nice. But when push comes to shove, people here, you had other people that stopped and to see if they could help. In the U.S., people are so afraid of getting sued, they're just, you know, just kind of, oh, it's being taken care of, and they just, you know, keep on going. As
I laid there in the on the sidewalk, you know, with my ankle twisted over, and here's little Janeth. Janeth is only like 5'1" or 5'2". She's sitting next to me. The guards from different buildings came out of the buildings because, you know, there's this big hulky guy laying in the street, you know, and they came over. They offered to bring a chair out if they thought I could get up to sit in a chair. One guy offered a sheet of plywood to see if it could load me. And 3, maybe 5 people stopped in their cars and asked if they could take me to the hospital. You know, I'm in awe of the kindness.
Yeah, that's you know, that's what I'm not a fan of all of Colombia. There's a lot of Colombia I don't like, but there are certain areas of Colombia that carry that traditional societal behavior. And Bucaramanga is one of those places. Manizales is one of those places. And Armenia is just notorious for, or, you know, it's famous for, you know, having those kind of people here. And that's the number one thing that I love about being here. So when you told me that experience, it's awesome, but I have to I honestly wasn't really surprised. I would have been surprised if it was other than that.
You know, I have a feeling that if this had happened in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, especially in today's San Francisco, that I'd still be laying there.
Yeah.
You know, 2.5 months later. It was, you know, people hear you on your podcast, Lawrence, you know, talking about the wonderful people. And sometimes, you know, you're one person. So that, you know, people sometimes don't pick up on that. Well, here's a number 2 person saying the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, just exceptionally kind people.
You got a nice comment here. For 73, you look very good, much younger.
Yes, I do.
Those troubles you went through do not show at all.
I'm a very handsome man. I do know that.
He sent me a few photos where he looked like dog shit. and I felt I won't put those up because they just look so bad.
It showed the picture of me coming out of surgery, and my face I looked like a pancake. It looked like I was flat. My features were, you know, all distorted and stuff.
Yeah, and the color was wrong. It looked like you were in pain. It just was bad. Let's see. What? Albion, August 12th, 13th, 14th for a golf tournament. Okay. Tex Blue Jeans. My insurance here, if you're over 65, good point. You can go to a line for the elder and it's much faster. I feel guilty to go ahead of the long line, being a gringo and everyone looking at me, but no issues. That's true, and it's not just for that. If you go to pay your utility bills, for example, they'll generally have a line. In the bank, everywhere, it's actually a law. Now,
Sura has those lines also.
And if you go to a place and they don't have the lines, maybe it's a smaller place, you could still go to the front and say that, and you won't have any problem. Oh, yes, of course. They're very respectful in that way. Now, when I used to go to pay a certain utility, I would physically go there. It wasn't working online. It works great now, but I would physically go there, and there was always a line. One day, I just wasn't feeling well, and the line was actually out the door, and that was the only time I actually said, "The hell with this! I'm not waiting an hour." And I went up. There was one other person in the over 65 line. By the time I got there, it's like I went on in. So you can do that. But when I'm, in a normal situation, if I'm feeling good, I just stay in line with everybody else. I get what you're saying.
That was Coleman saying he's going to be in Bucaramanga.
Yeah, in August for a golf tournament.
Yeah.
Well, I just looking at his spelling here.
Coleman, come over for lunch.
Yeah, let's see. We got Owen still wearing masks. Oh, in a hospital or any medical setting, you have to wear a mask. And I think that was even before COVID. But I'm not positive. But they're big on it in anything medical.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm 24 and I feel old. Well, you are. I hope I'm in your shape when I hit 70. Well, you're as old as you feel. Let's put it that way.
Go to a gym. I mean, it's a wonderful thing when you can work out and get your body in shape. COVID destroyed my body, and then all these medical situations haven't helped it. But I'm going to be back, and I could even get Lauren to the gym, and that to me was success.
Well, it wasn't hard. I actually really liked that gym, and he took me to another one that he wasn't fond of, and I went there, and I could see why. It was a beautiful place. It was massive, and it had rows and rows of brand new equipment, top shelf, state of the art kind of stuff. But when you look in there weren't that many people, and the ones that were, it was more like they were doing a selfie fashion show. It was more like I'm in the gym to show that I'm in the gym. It was weird, and it was kind of thing that I actually wouldn't have felt comfortable going in and actually working, because everybody else just kind of standing around gawking to each other.
It's spandex. Everybody's in spandex.
But the gym that he took me to, he described it well. Not filthy in that, floors are swept, but it was old. And it's an old boxer's gym. And people in there go there to work. Nobody's standing there. Well, take a break and a chat or something. But for the most part, they're there to work. And everybody's in there and they're sweating buckets. And, if there's any line, you wait for a piece of equipment or something, because there weren't duplicates. It was well equipped. It had everything, but you kind of want to plan it. So you go in and say, well, first I'm going to do the bicycle, because if I go at that time, nobody's on the bicycle. So you kind of plan it out like that. But people were in there for a purpose.
The gentleman, Jan, that owned the gym was from Amsterdam, and he had owned that gym for 26 years. And the only problem with the gym was it wasn't as clean as it possibly could, and that's the reason my hand got blown out of shape. I got a bacteria, I don't know, lifting some equipment. Anyways.
Yeah, he was a boxer, right?
He was a weightlifter from Amsterdam. He'd been lifting weights his whole life.
That's right.
What most people didn't notice, he had a gimp leg that he tried to cover very well, and so it was very skinny compared to the other leg. And so, to compensate for that, he lifted weights his whole life. And it was a very nice place, very friendly. And as you said, they had every piece of equipment you ever needed.
let me.
What time is 11:45?
Yeah, we're getting there. I just this one here. Okay, I'll meet you for lunch. It's Loren. I'm not a girl. There's two genders, but I'm only one.
Coleman, I can't promise everything because if I'm not feeling up to the mission, I might, tell you that. But I would love to meet you. You've been a steady on this podcast ever since I've belonged. That's for sure.
Well, maybe he can bring you lunch if you're not feeling good.
Or we can order rapid.
Yeah, there you go. I was looking. I've got him somewhere in my WhatsApp. And I was doing a quick search, but my WhatsApp has been acting up. It constantly is deleting the names. It's keeping the people there, but it only shows the phone number, and I have to keep correcting it, and then it goes away. Like I had to correct yours about 2 weeks ago. It's been fine ever since, but I'm doing this with people. It's like over and over. My WhatsApp is just acting up, or maybe it's the phone because it gets it from the phone list.
Well, I think some people have to renew their accounts every so often, and unless they put their name into it, it does come up just as the number.
But I get this in batches, and with people, it's like there's not a week that goes by when I'm not having to correct a handful of people, because I've got hundreds of people in here.
So the day
locally, or people that travel here.
So for my goodbye, the day that I can be in the gym lifting weights and pedaling on the bicycle, I'll come back on to Lauren's podcast and show you a shot of my leg. So, Lauren, thank you.
Find out about that anesthesia.
Yeah, no, I will.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, telling your stories. And well, you've had about as much experience as anybody could possibly have.
Yeah, well,
5 or 6 years you've been here.
I thought I was indestructible as a kid and, as a young adult. And so I carried that on through, and it's been okay up until I was around 60. And then parts just started falling off.
Yeah, I'm kind of finding that myself.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And
it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Talking soon. Okay. Well, that about runs the gamut. If you've got any comments or questions to post up, again, this is different software, so you're seeing a different format. But this software is great if you have a guest. I have to subscribe to it when I have a guest, and then I let the subscription run out. I just got a hi, and I'll bet that's Coleman. Yep, there's a big long list. So I will send your information on to him, and then you guys can talk to each other. Thank you. I appreciate that. You were in the system, but your photo's not there, and it's just a phone number, 207. Okay. So the big news is we're going to be meeting up for coffee at 11 a.m. Tuesday. So I will be there. And again, you can find the address. The place is named Barista, and it's near the North Hospital off of Bolivar, off of 14. Nice place. I forget the name of the building, but there's offices above it. I put out this past week my Pihao 6 stories in Pihao. So that video's out. It's weird. I'm not normally uploading videos these days. I do mostly this, and then I just stay busy, during a week. And so it kind of gets difficult unless I really pre-plan to do an upload type of video. Plus, anybody that knows me knows how much I passionately hate editing. And this video took me a while to edit, but I had to narrate it. And the narration was like almost a half an hour long. And I lost my voice again. I met up with a nice couple. I met him before. He came this time with his wife, and we were together from about 12 until, well, it was after dark. So after 6, we'll say. So for 6 hours, I was talking, and then his wife was very passionate about some certain topics, and she and I were really, it was very entertaining. We were into it, and and rapid fire on my throat, it just tore it up. And then I got to narrate that in that video, so you'll hear it's a little scruffy, but I managed to get by. It's pretty kind of like it is today. The thing with my throat is there's nothing actually wrong with it. It's just that I go periods of time where I'm not really talking. And then when I do, particularly with English, so my Spanish is just, it's just to get things done. And then when I meet somebody that speaks English, if you don't speak English for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, you just kind of crave it and you just talk too much. Anyway, what do we have here? Lauren, what about that coffee place you went in Pihao? Well, it's in there, and it's an interesting story. I was contemplating even doing a video about the owner, his family, how his family started it generations ago, and the coffee in that place, in particular in France, it's revered worldwide. But in France, it's very popular, and it's the coffee of choice of a number of coffee houses and institutions. There's something to do with the Olympics, I believe. I have to go back and read it. I don't recall the detail right now off the top of my head, but that's how his coffee was discovered. There was some event and he needed coffee, and so he came running with some coffee, and they fell in love with it. And so it's well known in France and very popular. Also, this past week was like a national vacation week, and I was in Pihao prior to that, and it was just it was really quiet. But I imagine that they had a fair amount of tourists this week. Road was quite a challenge to Pihao, wasn't it? Yeah, it's there were some real sketchy things, but in those places where it was sketchy, I couldn't use you got to have the camera in one hand because I don't have the dash mount or anything. So I've got to hold it while I'm driving. Well, you get to the road where you can't really, you have to set your camera down. And so I couldn't really show you some of the places where you wonder if it's going to collapse on you, even though it's a dry day. And there's always an issue with that road. I do see they're putting a lot of money in some of the areas where they're building up these huge reinforced concrete walls that weren't there before, and they're backfilling it. And I think they're trying to get to the end of it, but there's hardly a straight stretch on that road. It is so windy that even if that road was repaired, to run the 5 or 6 mile stretch, it's probably going to take you a good half an hour just on that stretch alone. So I think in the best of situations, it's, maybe an hour to get there from Armenia. But in the situation I was in, which was, I'd say, middle of the road, that was a couple hours. And then when it's raining, there's days where it's just not even passable. Okay. I guess that's the last of the questions. So we're going to end it here. Yep, we've run about the hour. So I want to thank you all. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the contributions. The peso to dollar getting kind of killed. This month, it cost me 1 million pesos in lost value. So that kind of sucks. But that's just how it goes. The thing is, we were living we were living in an exceptionally good time. And right now, this is where we probably should have been this whole time. So, you know, I hope it doesn't drop much more. But like I said, it was 1,000 pesos even lower 5 years ago when I arrived here. So anything beyond that is kind of like windfall in my positive outlooking type of person that I am. All right. So enough talking. Let's get on to the outro, and I'll see you next week. Thank you all.
Oh.